Okay, let's dive right into this comprehensive explainer on the absolute most critical, evidence-based rules for maximizing your muscle growth without wasting any of your time. Look, if you've ever felt like you're just putting in endless hours at the gym, but you're not seeing those physical changes you actually want, you are definitely in the right place. We are pulling directly from top-tier sports science and the insights of leading experts to give you the definitive, no-nonsense blueprint to hypertrophy. So, here is our roadmap for today. 1. The foundation of growth. 2. Picking your exercises. 3. Flawless lifting technique. 4. Sets, reps, and rest. And finally, 5. Breaking through plateaus. Let's just get right into it. Section 1. The foundation of growth. We'll be looking specifically at consistency and what's known as the SFR framework. Because before we even think about touching a dumbbell, we have to establish the foundational philosophy that basically dictates whether you're going to grow, or if you're going to stay exactly the same size year after year. Now, the biggest source of variance in muscle growth over a given year is incredibly simple. It's consistency. I know it sounds super basic, right? But it is the absolute truth. Listen, even if you do literally everything else completely wrong, just showing up with some level of intensity on a consistent basis is the absolute non-negotiable prerequisite to getting jacked. You could have the most scientifically optimized, perfect program in the world, but if you're only doing it intermittently, you are always going to lose to the person who just shows up and works hard week in and week out. But assuming you are consistent, how do we start making smarter choices? Well, this single concept right here, the stimulus to fatigue ratio, or SFR, is basically the most important filter you are ever going to use for every single movement in the gym. Think of it like a really strict cost-benefit analysis. You're measuring the precise amount of target muscle growth you get against the joint, connective tissue, and total nervous system fatigue that specific exercise causes. Your ultimate goal? High stimulus for low fatigue. And to put that into perspective, let's compare two totally famous lifts. Take a high bar squat. It has a fantastic high SFR for leg growth. It directly targets and stretches the quads, and while it's tiring, the systemic fatigue is actually pretty manageable. Now flip that and look at the conventional deadlift. It actually has a super low SFR for specific muscle growth. It creates this massive systemic and axial spine fatigue that heavily drains your central nervous system. I mean, sure, it loosely targets 80% of your body, but it also targets 100% of your desire to just go home and take a nap. If pure hypertrophy is your goal, you absolutely need exercises that check the stimulus boxes without completely bankrupting your energy. Which leads us perfectly into section 2, picking your exercises. And looking at the proxies of stimulus, we really need to figure out exactly how to choose the right movements for your unique biomechanics. Because despite what anyone on the internet tells you, there is absolutely no single mandatory exercise that everyone has to do. So you might be wondering, how do you actually know an exercise is working for you? Well, you use these 4 proxies for stimulus. They act as the ultimate lie detector test for a good workout. First up is tension. Are you feeling a deep mechanical pull directly in the target muscle? Second is the burn. During those higher reps, do you actually feel the accumulation of metabolic byproducts right where you want them? Third is the pump. Is that target muscle swelling and filling with fluid? And finally, perturbation, which is just a fancy way of asking, do you experience profound weakness, shakiness, or maybe even a cramp in that specific muscle after the workout? If your chosen exercise checks off most of those physical boxes, my friend, that is an A+ movement for you, period. All right, section 3, flawless lifting technique, because having the right exercise is totally useless if your execution is sloppy. Let's refine exactly how you should be lifting that weight to maximize every single rep. But hey, before we start lifting heavy, we have to warm up properly. And look, spending 45 minutes trudging on the elliptical and foam rolling, that is pure fluff. Instead, take this hyper-specific warm-up protocol directly to the gym floor with you. You're going to flow from 12 to 8 to 4, meaning 12 reps with a very light weight just to align your muscle fibers. Then 8 reps with a medium weight. Then 4 reps with a heavier weight to really prep your nervous system. This directly tells your tendons, hey, it's safe to push hard now, perfectly priming you for your actual working sets. Once you are warm, here is your flawless execution checklist. First, mentally and mechanically target the correct muscle. Second, you have to maintain extreme bodily stability. If you're wiggling all over the place or balancing on a Bosu ball, your brain automatically dials down your force production just to keep you safe. Third, strictly control the eccentric. That's the downward phase of the lift. If you aren't checking these boxes, especially controlling that negative, you are literally leaking force and robbing yourself of free hypertrophy coins. You want to control the weight, ensure a full range of motion, and ideally pause right in that stretch. And let's focus on that stretch for just a second, because this is crazy. A deep stretch actually yields 5 to 10% more muscle growth than partial ranges of motion. While top-end partials can definitely work in some contexts, the science makes it crystal clear. Enduring the pain of a deep, paused stretch is undeniably superior for forced adaptation. It creates this incredible tension right where the muscle fibers are at their most vulnerable state, literally forcing them to grow. Moving on to section 4. Sets, reps, and rest, the metrics of hypertrophy. We are now entering the absolute mathematical core of your programming. How many reps, how heavy should they be, and exactly how long you should be resting. I highly recommend taking a mental screenshot of this table, because as long as your weight pushes you near failure within these specific parameters, you are mathematically locked right into the optimal growth zone. You're looking for 5 to 30 reps taken very, very close to failure. Aim for about 5 to 8 high-quality working sets per muscle group per session. You'll want to hit each muscle group 2 to 4 times a week and try to keep your total session length between 45 minutes and an hour and a half max. Honestly, anything longer than that and your nervous system is probably just checking out anyway. And speaking of checking out, let's talk about the concept of junk volume. Exceeding 12 to 15 working sets per session for a single muscle group means your nervous system is absolutely 100% cashed out. Doing 20 sets of chest in a single day is literally like frying an egg that's already burnt to a crisp. You're just generating immense fatigue with zero extra muscle gain. Remember, more is not always better. Better is better. So how long should you actually rest between these high-quality sets? Toss out that generic rest exactly 60 seconds advice right now and use this 4-factor checklist instead. You do not start your next set until 1. Your breathing has totally returned to normal. 2. You psychologically feel strong and actually ready to go again. 3. Your synergists, or supporting muscles like your lower back during a heavy squat, are fully recovered. And 4. The target muscle has cleared out its lactic acid. If you're still gasping for air or your synergists are cramping up, you are fundamentally not ready for another set. Take the rest. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, breaking through plateaus. It's time for a reality check. Let's address the absolute most frustrating part of fitness. What do you do when you hit a wall and the scale or the mirror absolutely refuses to budge? To break through a plateau, you have to lock yourself into the progressive overload loop. Step 1. You add a tiny amount of weight, or just 1 to 2 reps every single week. Step 2. You keep fighting for that progression until fatigue physically causes you to miss your previous rep PR. At that exact moment, Step 3 triggers. You implement a deload, intentionally cutting your volume and weight in half for a few days just to drop all that built-up systemic fatigue. Then, Step 4. You start a brand new cycle just slightly below your new maximum. This continuous rhythm, pushing, failing, recovering, resetting, it forces you to actually try hard and mathematically guarantees progression over time. But hey, if you implement that loop and you still aren't growing, it's time for a harsh reality check. Are you actually tracking your lifts in a logbook, or are you just sort of guessing every time you walk in? Are you truly eating in a caloric surplus? You can't build a massive house without bricks, right? You literally cannot magically gain 30 extra pounds of tissue out of thin air. Are you sleeping enough to stay awake without chugging caffeine all day long? And most importantly, are you genuinely lifting within 1 to 3 reps of complete muscle failure? If you've been stuck at the exact same weight for years, you need to ruthlessly audit your sleep, your calories, and just admit that you might actually be stopping 10 reps short of true failure. I absolutely love this point because it perfectly captures the tough love truth of this whole process. See, your body fundamentally resists change. It is super comfortable exactly where it is. If you want to force it to adapt and grow new tissue, you really have to internalize this reality. If you want to grow, you have to find the inner strength to get hit by that truck of a little bit more weight or reps than you could do last week. Documented, brutal progression really is the only way forward. So there you have it. You now have the definitive blueprint. The math, the technique, the progression loop, it is all right there in your hands. You understand the stimulus to fatigue ratio, the proxies of tension, flawless execution, and the perfect set ranges. So the only question left for you is this. The very next time you step under that bar, what exactly are you going to do differently? Think about it, plan it out, and I will see you on the next explainer.